Catherine Mary Lyon, who was 10 years old, and Sheila Mary Lyon, who was 12, are two sisters who vanished without a trace on March 25th, 1975, while on a shopping trip in the shopping mall in Wheaton, Maryland. For decades, their disappearance has been a lasting mystery and source of terror for their community. Catherine and Sheila were born to John and Mary Lyon in Kingston, Maryland. They also had an older brother called Jay, who later became a homicide detective. Their father, John Lyon, was a well-known radio personality on WMAL radio. They lived in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood at a time when parents let their children play outside and didn't have to worry about stranger danger. It was a simpler time when everyone watched out for each other's children. Sheila was in 5th grade and Catherine in 7th, and both were honour roll students. They kept their money in piggy banks, and as any typical child did, they had posters all over their bedroom walls. On the first day of Easter vacation from school, they decided they wanted to walk to the nearby Wheaton Plaza Mall. That afternoon, they had planned to see the Easter exhibits and eat at the Orange Bowl pizza joint approximately a half mile from their home. They left home at 11 a.m., agreeing to be home by 4 p.m. That afternoon, they didn't come home, and their parents called the police by 7 p.m. An extensive search began with police combing through weeds and every strand of trees. The police sent scuba divers into ponds and storm sewers, along with every vacant house for miles. Neighbours helped the family search the woods and streets. Lasting for months, the search for the sisters had created widespread media attention, with hundreds of tips pouring in. However, as tips slowed down, the hope of finding the sisters became a sense of desperation. Police were told by witnesses that the sisters were at the mall at 1 p.m. A boy who was a friend of Catherine and Sheila told the police he saw them together outside of the Orange Bowl, talking with an unidentified man who looked to be in his 60s wearing a brown suit. He described the man carrying a brown briefcase with a tape recorder inside, with children around who were speaking into the microphone. About 2 weeks after their disappearance, a witness living in Manassas, Virginia, reported seeing the two girls in the rear of a 1968 Ford station wagon, bound and gagged. This lead was later labelled questionable by police. The story created a media storm and generated calls from attention seekers, psychics, and extortionists. In the following week, several calls were received at the Lyons' home demanding a ransom in exchange for the girls. One man told the Lyons to leave $10,000 inside Annapolis courthouse restroom. Police directed the Lyons to pay the ransom, leaving only $101 in the briefcase, enough to make it a federal crime, but the ransom was never collected. A week after the abduction, a man about 18 years old, Lloyd Welch, went to the Wheaton Plaza shopping mall. He approached a security guard and told him that he had been at the mall the days they had disappeared. Lloyd repeated the story, saying that the girls were talking to a man with a tape recorder. There wasn't much known about Lloyd. He was a carnival worker, he travelled from town to town, and was considered a drifter. Police issued a lie detector test, which he failed, but he was able to be dismissed as a suspect and considered as an unreliable witness. Another strong lead came from a young girl who was a friend of the sisters. To this day, the girl's identity has been kept confidential for fear of retaliation. The girl described the man wearing raggedy clothing, white, in his late teens or early 20s, with acne and scars on his left cheek. The girl told the police that the man was staring so intently that she felt compelled to confront him and say something. Strangely enough, the police sketch looked similar to Lloyd Welch, a mugshot that had been taken earlier. When police made a push to solve the case in 2014, they found Lloyd to have an extensive criminal record, including an arrest in 1977 in Montgomery County for breaking into a house 8 blocks from Wheaton Plaza and stealing $580 worth of jewelry. Reportedly, Henry Parker was the cousin of Lloyd Welch. He informed police in December 2014 that back in December 1975, he had met his cousin at his house in Virginia and helped him remove 2 duffel bags. Henry told police that the bags smelt like death and had red stains covering them. Apparently, they threw the bags into a fire in a remote mountain area in Bedford County, Virginia. In February 2014, police announced Lloyd Welch was again a person of interest in the disappearance of the Lyon sisters. Since their disappearance between 1973 and 77, he had been charged with various crimes, including rape charges in 3 states, and he was serving time for child molestation. Police indicted him for kidnapping and murder of Catherine and Sheila. According to court documents, he kidnapped the girls from the mall and travelled miles away from them to a remote location. He then proceeded to murder the girls and burn their remains. 10 women came forward and willingly testified that they were also kidnapped by him. Their testimony was only heard by court. One of the women, in her 50s now, told the police that Lloyd had approached her outside of a record store. He told her that he was a policeman and he needed to speak to her about her brother stealing a radio. When the woman called her brother, Lloyd took off. When he was serving time for several other cases, his trial for the murders of the Lyon sisters began. The case continued for 2 years and he finally pled guilty to the accusations. It took decades, but finally the killer had been caught and the family could have peace knowing that their daughter's murderer had been held accountable. The details of the case are still somewhat cloudy, but police believe that he held the sisters against their will, raped, murdered, and possibly dismembered and burned them. He received a 48-year sentence due to his age, and then another 10-year sentence he was already serving for an unrelated case in Delaware. John Lyon thanked authorities once the trial was over. The 3-year trial had been difficult for him, his wife, and their sons. However, he was appreciative of the detectives involved in the case and said that over the years they had treated their daughters like their own, and he would forever be grateful.